So I start by acknowledging the peoples of the land that I'm connecting in from today, Quandamooka peoples, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. And I also acknowledge their future leaders that we work with every day, children in educational settings. And today, Phyllis is going to talk to us about her unique and culturally informed ways of working with children to support them to be the best leaders possible in the future. So Phyllis is a Learning Innovator in Indigenous Perspectives at West Moreton Anglican College. Welcome, Phyllis.
Thank you, Linda, for that kind introduction. I'm housed here in Ipswich region at West Moreton Anglican College. I've been here for the last 4 years. And if you had an opportunity to see part 1 of this conversation, this is where I'll be picking up and doing the part 2. So what I introduced in the first conversation was the approach that we have here at West Moreton Anglican College. It's a whole school approach in how we work to embed and work with First Nations perspective. So allow me to just share my screen. And hopefully you can all see this. So yes, that's me in a another outfit a few years ago when I first started. And I initially came into the role as a liaison officer, but we quickly began to see that there was a gap that was requiring to be filled from the knowledge and awareness and capability of our students and all staff. So just to connect in and do my own acknowledgement, I acknowledge First Nation custodians of the land we're gathered on, show respect and honour the diverse languages, laws, customs, cultures and traditions. And I pay tribute to the elders that have since time immemorial have always shown and continue to display profound wisdom in their leadership. They live their wisdom and we all benefit from this knowledge. I acknowledge the ancestors in their way of teaching to learn, which benefits all. First Nations people are ancient teachers. Their way of thinking is reflective in their practices, in how they care for, connect to, and show wisdom of country. I thank the ancestors for their teaching in the foundation of true leadership, that it begins when we truly serve something greater than ourselves. And I acknowledge the Great Spirit God that we look to him for guidance in this place as we take our steps slowly, gently, with honour and respect in the mara. So at Westmac, we intentionally came in to create a space that identified and filled a gap in what we affectionately refer to as Westmac Indigenous education. And this is the symbol that we use to reflect our intentional teaching. So with the symbol of people sitting facing each other, the teacher, and the smallest symbol of the person sitting is the child. And behind the teacher, we have 3 rows of dots. And those 3 rows of dots are reflecting of the colours that we find here at Westmac. Certainly the colours that we reflect within the uniforms. So the 3 dots, rows of dots, meaning junior, middle and senior. And in each of those rows are 8 areas of learning. There are 8 dots. There was a lot of discussion, a lot of building of strategic planning around how we were going to approach this. And what we ended up coming up with was that our purpose here, I took from a quote and our own Indigenous education policy. And it came up that our purpose is to raise our knowledge, to enhance the education. So anything that we do in any area that we work in, our intention is raising knowledge to enhance the education. And that meant that we had to have a conversation around what are our educational priorities. So if you're looking for a first step, that would be your first step. Have the conversation. What are we hoping to achieve here? What is our priority? For us, strategically, it looks like this. Raise that level of cultural understanding, improve improve curriculum uptake of Indigenous perspectives from the cross-curriculum priorities, strengthen social emotional wellbeing of our First Nations students, create the culturally safe space within the community, within the classroom, with any space that the student occupies within the school. And then engage and practice reconciliation. So strategically, I have wanted to raise the level of our teachers. Then I would look at improving the curriculum uptake once our teachers felt capable. And then through working together with our teachers and support staff, we could work to strengthen the social emotional wellbeing of our First Nations students. And all of that leads to practicing reconciliation. So we call this our Dandirri approach. And the symbol that you see there starts off with that first symbol with a small dot in the middle, which is Ngari, Millen, and then Gambili. So we intentionally started looking at awareness of ourselves and then looking at how we're capable and working with each other. And then how does that all flow on to everyone? And so this is what we refer to as our approach, Dandirri, which is the Yagara word for to come together. Well, you might also recognise it from the resource library in Inala, Dandirri. And today, this is part 2, as I said, and we're intentionally only speaking about the last 2, which is Dandirri wellbeing, the social emotional wellbeing of our First Nations students, and Dandirri reconciliation, and sharing with you that looks like here at West Moreton Anglican College. So the very first one we're looking at is that raising that level or strengthening our social emotional of our First Nation students. And any intention that I have is always to empower and build on. So I do not start with what I refer to as that deficit approach, which is how do I support the students? My question was, how do I strengthen these students to bring with them into the space, their learning place, their authentic selves? So in conversation with what I had with our First Nations students, they wanted to have a better connection to their culture, their identity, and a better understanding of kinship, like who was now in their kinship system, allowing that to build connection and their spirit gaining wisdom. So these are the symbols that we use to identify. So you have that symbol of the person, that connecting to. So it was about me connecting to myself, and then the bigger symbol of the all of the colours and the symbols together to create what Ngari looks like. So to get you a better idea, that's the journey that our First Nation students were taking. They're building that culture, that identity, kinship, connections, wisdom, and spirit. My intention for the students was to ensure that they had hands-on country. You can't talk about First Nations culture without speaking and immersing yourself into country. And so for us, it was the intentional hands-on country when we look at Yagara country, which is where the school is located. And then the second part was getting their feet on country. So with their hands and their feet, connecting both ways, top to and bottom. And then not forgetting that middle, which is the heart in country. So it was the whole person experience, I guess, is what you would say. For me, it was about building student leadership, not building specific or a different pathway, but giving them a strong foundation in following the pathway that they chose within their learning place here at West to allow them to be their authentic selves with their peer groups, with their teachers, and importantly, with themselves. The definition that I use for leadership is the process of behaviours or actions taken to bring about change and create influence within a circle of people who have the choice to choose and to follow. And as this is a very bespoke and contextualised leadership development program aimed at students, both in middle and senior school, I wanted them to know that in the space they are in, when they are there by themselves and not within the safety of Ngati, the group, or even having me with them, is that they work to be leaders within that space, meaning that they can use their voice, that they can, their behaviour, how they behave, and what they say to engage and learn from themselves, for themselves, sorry, and from others. And teaching them that being that way, which is connected back to our ancient way, it brings about that change and creates influence in a space that they never thought they would have an opportunity to create influence in. So it's a very exciting process. So how we do that is when we're looking at behaviour and actions and change and create influence, so that's the lead, and then the results of the lead are change and create influence. We're looking at specifically at people throughout our history. And I try to go back as early as I can. So what we've done, we've commenced the conversation of not only just who I share, who my stories of my leaders who have been passed down through history, but also then we also look at what's been captured in writing from our history books about Truganini, Simon Wonga, William Cooper, just to name a few. I mean, I limited it to 3, right? But we all know that there's hundreds more that we can refer to when we're speaking about leadership. So I fill their space with Indigenous leaders, First Nation leaders, with that research on what leadership is that we get taught, whether we're in positions of leadership or looking back as to who are the great leaders of our history. For us as First Nations people, these are the great leaders of our history, just some of them, yeah? So we then move on to what I model this off is what I call the Leadership Challenge by James Kouzis and Barry Posner. Sorry, I don't call it that. It is that, the Leadership Challenge. And that is, they look at, there's 5 practices. So model a way of life, create a shared vision, challenge and innovate, enable others around you, and encourage the heart. And then that puts all those principles of culture, identity, kinship, connection, wisdom, and spirit. It's really exciting to work with young people who are ultimately absolutely aware of leadership. It is pushed down their throats every day. You know, you have leaders within the school, you have student leadership. But here at West Moreton Anglican College, our First Nations students are the only students who participate in a very specific, strategically designed leadership development program. This is not based on where it is that they're failing, because for our students here, we take that approach. If we empower you, we will enable you to act, and you act first with yourself, yeah, and then you encourage and influence others. So model a way of life means looking at how they are modeling their connection to their ancient past. So to help them do this, we created what we called a NAIDOC experience. And that's going to be really exciting because in that we look at the platypus. And I use the example of the platypus because the platypus is like good leadership, right? Platypuses, they're there and they're hard to find, but when you find them, you can enjoy the wonder of seeing them. And for me, that was like leadership, hard to find, very mysterious, but when you find them, you enjoy the wonder of sitting in under or experiencing good leadership. So that's why you see a platypus. That's our spirit animal, I guess you'd say. And this is the journey that they go on then with student leadership. Within our NAIDOC experience, so the group of kids got together and we presented our the NAIDOC theme of Get Up, Stand Up, Show Up, explored that in 3 areas of 3 displays. So we had one, for example, a brother and a sister present their grandmother's story. So the grandmother's story was she was part of the exodus of Croker Island. So they looked at her as a leader and what they gained from her as a leader when she got up, stood up and showed up. So it was a wonderful journey with these kids. And so next week we're looking at starting off our conversation series where we invite somebody to come in and have a yarn with the students. And also the Ngari student, and this is really different, the Ngari students get to sit on a student advisory board or a group, our deputy principal, and provide feedback, advice of their experiences within Westmac, and that takes away all the levels and layers of people they have to go through, and they sit and have lunch and discuss, and out of that has come the request to have their symbol of the Ngari student leadership put onto a badge. And we don't have a lot of First Nations students, but when you have First Nations students who are proudly wearing this badge on their tie, front and centre, you see it, you notice it, and it creates conversations. So that's modelling the way, so leadership, leading in that space, being proud of who they are and the influence that they have. We now have the Year 11 students who are ready to put themselves forward for student leadership positions. It was never about creating a separate Indigenous leader for us here. We wanted them to aspire to being school captain, cultural attaché, a house captain. We didn't want to see them limited or limit themselves to just being a First Nations leader. We wanted them to step into their the whole space of their community, because ultimately what our First Nations students are doing is walking in 2 worlds. And part of the leadership program is designed to help them achieve this with confidence and pride. Okay, so that's our student leadership program. I'm very proud of that one. I'm mad on leadership, so I was very honoured to be able to bring this to our First Nation students. The last thing we want to talk about is, what does Dandirri reconciliation look like here at Westmac? And for all those keen eyes out there, yes, there is a spelling mistake on Dandirri. But if you hadn't seen it, now you'll see it. So this is the symbol for reconciliation, what we call the Westmac Way. And this captures it's a map of West Moreton Anglican College, capturing our 3 campuses, the junior campus, the middle campus, and the senior campus. So ultimately you walk across from the junior and then up to the senior. And then that's, with our 3 values in the middle, faith, service, knowledge. And again, capturing the dots, the 8 areas around their academic learning, or what we are also saying, their pillars of growth. So our vision, which is like any good vision, you want to capture everything that you have to say, everything that's important, is your vision, your how you're going to do it. And so ours is probably like yours, very wordy. So I won't read through it because we break that up, but I just wanted you to see this is our vision and this is our approach. It was important for us to have in our vision to also declare how we would approach that here at West Moreton Anglican College. Now, if you have had experiences like me in the past, you would see very wordy visions and people not really using that vision. You can get blinded, disrupted, distracted. Sorry, not disrupted. You can get disrupted from your vision and distracted from the vision. So I was really keen to use the vision and our approach when we were creating opportunities here at Westmac in how we practice reconciliation. So you might ask, well, what do I mean by that? So here is our vision, and we took very specific phrases from our vision, such as our vision was to create a shared identity, to establish a better perspective, learn in wonder, and educate from a place of wisdom, all leading to expand our knowledge where listening, participating, and building partnerships and relationships occur. And then in our approach, how were we going to do all of that from the vision? We were going to value our ancient past, rich it. I think there's something else, but I can't quite see it, but I'll start from what I can see. Richness and diversity to developing an expanded view, mutual respect, understanding and acknowledging, possess the knowledge, skills and understanding, and strengthen relationships to celebrate our diverse community. Because just like your schools, our community or workplace, our community is very diverse. We have all students who have different identities and who are practicing culturally in different ways outside of their school community. So what I mean by when we take from our vision and make sure we're aligned with it, how we approach it, we use it in this way. We created a special workbook which ensures that if we do a project or we do create an opportunity for reconciliation, we take directly from our vision and our approach. So here's an example of the school that it was going to have impact in. It was a whole school environment. It was all 3 schools together. The description of the activity. So here at West Moreton Anglican College, one of our most sacred days is celebrating our founding day. So we affectionately refer to it as Founders Day. The description of the activity is this is the very first time we did a welcome to country as part of the sacred day of Founders Day. Normally we just had students do the acknowledgement. We wanted to build relationships and strengthen relationships. So we invited the traditional custodians in to do their ceremony. The goal and the outcome was to improve community links and demonstrate respect. So that's taken directly from our action. And so how did it support our vision? By creating a shared identity. And how does it support our approach? It strengthened relationships. And the wrap action was the welcome to country. And so that keeps us specifically, especially when you have quite a large RAP committee, it keeps us all in focus and on direct path with understanding of what people are doing and why they're doing it. That leads to authenticity, because we had all 3 schools involved in our journey of reconciliation. It wasn't just a RAP committee in one part of the school. It's made up of junior, middle and senior, and then we have our subcommittees from that. So to ensure that everybody knew what everyone was doing and was on the same path with the same vision and the same approach, we just put that all into our workbook. So it's just a drop down in an Excel spreadsheet, and you select the goal and outcome and how it supports your vision and what is the approach. It keeps us honest, I guess, and knowing that it's not just ticking a box. This then really truly is what we say immersing and embedding in the Dandirri approach of Ngari, Millen and Ngambili. So for reconciliation this year was to be brave, make change. So we had certainly the junior school, and all 3 schools had the assemblies and celebrating it in various ways. The junior school's always awesome because the little kiddies, the little wee macs we call them, just embrace the wonder of the things that we do, whether it's dance, songs, reading stories. They just give themselves over to that experience. It's probably not so cool as much in senior school to get up and do dancing and that in front of your peers, unlike our junior kids where the year sixes lead the dance. And so we make this a very special occasion for certainly in junior school, but our subcommittees in middle and senior are working very hard to ensure that it's immersive experience that is experienced in both those two schools. And that's where I can leave you today. So if you had any questions that you specifically would like to have answered or would just like to reach out, I have put my email on there for you, and I will very happy to make myself available. We are very proud of what we're doing here at West Moreton Anglican College. We believe in creating change. We believe in modelling the way to enable others to act. And we lead with our heart. So we have, we're only just starting. So we've raised the awareness and we're working hard now from our leadership team down, where I get to sit with them and have conversations, to our students where they are embracing and practicing Dandirri. Thank you very much.
I know that you've said in the past that you have a very productive working relationship with the whole of school and with the school leadership team. Do you want to just mention a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we had to be real. So being real means in that conversation where we first talked about our priorities, we were aware that this was something that was big and was going to have impact. And if we did it well, it would change the way people think, and it would change our culture, and it would change the way we talk and do First Nations perspectives. So deliberately, that was, you have to have a person who can lead that. And that's change management. That's cultural transformation. You have to have an understanding of that so that you get the people to come on board with you. If you don't know how what cultural transformation, what the process would look like, or practice, or anything, again, I'm happy to have that conversation. But there are, you can just Google that and look at a process or steps on how you can layer that down. One of the very last steps that I did in that cultural transformation was create a transitional team, and that's why reconciliation was part of that last rung to go in, in the ladder, the last rung, because that was the transitional team being created. What we talk about in reconciliation, then how it sprinkles out. So our reconciliation committee spreads it out from across, and our leadership team, who I'm very privileged to have a good working relationship with, being invited to strategic planning days, contributing to ELT meetings, we get to sprinkle that down. So currently our ELT are working one-on-one with me on how they will put into practice Dandirri approach with the seat that they occupy. So it's a very intentional process where we did the very first day where we looked at what is Dandirri approach and why it's important. I follow the golden circle rule of Simon Sinek, follow the why, the how, and the what. So we were in the why, we did the why, now we're doing the how, and then finally at the end of the year, we'll look at what we will gain from that. What have we learned? What will be our outcome?
Oh, that was a very strategic approach on your part, Phyllis.
Very. You if you don't approach it with design, and specifically with a strong why and a strong foundation, it will not progress. You have to have that to get your stakeholders on board. And by stakeholders you're working with are teachers who are already so full to capacity with what we're doing, with what they're doing, in their jobs. They're already at full capacity. So I had to be very strategic in, if I'm changing a way they're thinking, to be very specific and strategic in how that looked. So we've got some really great champions on board. But, from that first part that I did, the first talk where we talked about professional development, we lead that very specifically here, where we have workshops, and then I lead the conversations within the planning groups that occur. So it's a full-time job, but when you do it well, you will have the most amazing smile, and you will have such a deep sense of accomplishment, not for yourself, but the idea of knowing that you're representing your ancestors in a way that is allowing people to get to know them authentically. And that's part of what I love most, because through me, you get to know my people. You get to know the spirit of the hard work ethics of my father, and then that just keeps going on and on and on down through, that ancestral line. So in many ways, sometimes I say when I'm standing to present, I'm like a conduit for them. It's not my voice. It may be my voice, but it's their words. So when you stand with that knowing, then you have a way of being that brings such authenticity to the role and for people. And that's why we specifically look at learning in wonder. If I can get that aha moment or those neurosenses pathways lightening up with wonder, then you're listening, you're taking it in. Thanks,
You're
Linda.
doing such an amazing job there, Phyllis.
I do love my job.
And I'm sure they love having you there.
Yeah.
Thank you once again for contributing.
You're welcome.
To this
Thank you, Linda.
Series of talks. And
yes.
I'm sure that this video will be widely spread.
Look, yeah, I hope so, because it's not because of me, but because of, that RISE formula, the raise knowledge, improve the curriculum, strengthen. So we just use the acronym of RISE for that. That's a formula that you can take away from today and start embedding it into your school. We have to just stop thinking that, saying to our teachers, you've got to embed First Nations perspective. We have one of Australia's largest workforce and have to be culturally capable when we're representing and educating about our First Nations perspective, because our historical narrative did such a poor job. So we've got, when we talk about intergenerational trauma from First Nations perspective, there's also the trauma for non-Indigenous people, that they do not want to be offensive to us. And so that can be a really strong barrier of engaging. And if we can together, Dandirri, come together and break that, you have, and so that's why it's a leadership practice, enabling others to act, very specifically, not to teach it, because that's not for them. And sometimes it's not even for me. It's teaching about, and then, and that can be just having books displayed in your room. And it's not about having First Nations students in your room. It's about doing intentional practice within your classroom, because if you don't have somebody, we have had students who have identified that they're First Nations, but I guarantee you we have probably many who have not made that choice to identify yet. And that's what cultural safety can bring. All right.
We're on a long journey, and
Very
they're very
long journey.
fortunate to have you there to help them along that journey. Thank you very much, Phyllis.
That's very kind.